The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Maya Chen stood in the sterile examination room, her hands trembling not from cold but from rage. The 3 border security officers had been smugly confident moments before another. Suspected smuggler caught trying to cross from Mexico into Texas with suspicious documentation. They'd seen her weathered clothes, her sun-darkened skin, her calloused hands, and made their assumptions. "Strip down to your undergarments," Officer Martinez had commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been questioned. "We have reasonable suspicion you're carrying contraband." Maya's jaw had tightened, but she'd complied. She knew the drill. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Blend in. That had been her life for the past 18 months, invisible, forgettable. Just another face in the crowd of people trying to disappear. But as she pulled her faded cotton shirt over her head, everything changed. Officer Martinez, a stocky woman with suspicious eyes, had been reaching for her phone to document the search when she froze mid-motion. Her face went pale as her gaze fixed on Maya's left ribcage, where a distinctive scar ran in a perfect 6-inch line just below her breast. It wasn't just any scar. It was precise, clinical, the kind left by a very specific type of military field surgery. More importantly, it was accompanied by a small, faded tattoo that most people would never recognize, but anyone with high-level military clearance would know immediately: the Delta Force trident. Small, discreet, positioned exactly where regulations specified for deep cover operatives. Officer Rodriguez's cocky demeanor evaporated as his eyes followed his partner's horrified stare. The room fell into absolute silence except for the relentless buzzing of those cheap fluorescent bulbs. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered, her voice barely audible. "Ma'am, we need to ... please put your shirt back on." Maya's dark eyes remained steady, betraying nothing, but inside, her carefully constructed new life was already crumbling. After exactly 18 months of anonymity, of finally feeling safe, of believing she could just be another undocumented worker trying to make a living. Her past had found her again. The scar told a story she'd never wanted to tell: Syria. Betrayal and being left for dead while her unit was eliminated. Now, as she watched the 3 officers exchanging panicked glances, Maya realized her 18 months of peace were over. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I want to take a moment to thank you for watching. Creating and narrating these detailed, novel-length stories takes tremendous time and research to bring you the most engaging content possible. We're embarking on a journey of nearly 50,000 words together. That's a full novella. If you're already hooked by what you've heard, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing this story with someone who would enjoy it, and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. This is going to be an epic adventure, so get comfortable, and let's continue with this remarkable tale. The transformation in the room was immediate and electric. Officer Rodriguez, who moments before had been barking orders with bureaucratic authority, now stood with his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. His partner Martinez had actually taken a step backward, as if the small woman before them had suddenly become radioactive. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, his voice now respectful and uncertain, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're going to need to make some phone calls." Maya pulled her shirt back on with deliberate slowness, buying time to think. The faded fabric felt different, now no longer the disguise of an invisible immigrant worker, but suddenly inadequate armor against the storm she knew was coming. "What kind of phone calls?" she asked, her voice carrying just the slightest hint of her years of tactical training. Not enough to sound threatening, but sufficient to remind these officers that they were no longer dealing with some desperate border crosser. Martinez fumbled with her radio, then seemed to think better of it. Her hands were shaking slightly. "We need to contact our supervisor, and probably some federal agencies." "Which agencies?" Maya's question was quiet, but carried weight. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, Rodriguez spoke, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Ma'am, that marking, that scar and tattoo combination, ... We're required to report any encounters with current or former members of certain special operations units." Maya felt the familiar cold knot form in her stomach. She known this day would come eventually. You couldn't stay hidden forever, not when you carried the kind of secrets she did. But after 18 months of careful anonymity, she'd started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could build something resembling a normal life. "I haven't been active military in over 2 years, she said carefully. It was technically true, though it left out the more complicated reality of her situation. "That doesn't matter," Martinez said, finding her voice again. "Protocol is protocol." "We have to." The door burst open without warning, cutting off Martinez's words. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped in, flanked by 2 others who screamed federal agent despite their attempt at casual dress. The man in the suit had steel-gray hair, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of bearing that suggested he was used to being the most dangerous person in any room. Until now. His gaze swept the scene, taking in the nervous border officers and the small woman who stood in the center like the eye of a storm. When his eyes met Maya's, she saw recognition flicker across his features. "Officers, you're dismissed," he said without looking away from Maya. "Return to your regular duties and forget this encounter ever happened. That's not a request." Rodriguez and Martinez didn't need to be told twice. They practically fled the room, leaving Maya alone with the 3 newcomers. "Hello, Maya," the gray-haired man said once the door closed. "It's been a long time." Maya studied his face, searching her memory. Then it clicked, and she felt her blood turn to ice water. "Deputy Director Harrison," she said flatly. "I should have known you'd be the one to find me." James Harrison had been the CIA liaison to her Delta Force unit during their final disastrous mission. He'd been the one to brief them on the intelligence that had led them straight into a trap. He'd also been one of the last people to see her unit alive except for Maya herself. "You look different," Harrison observed, circling her like a predator sizing up prey. "The short dark hair suits you better than the blonde. And you've lost weight. Hard living will do that. What do you want?" Maya asked, keeping her voice level despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Direct as always. "I admired that about you, Chen. Still do." Harrison gestured to his companions, who had positioned themselves between Maya and the door. "We need to talk. There have been some developments." "The kind of developments that require cornering me in a border patrol facility?" Harrison smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The kind that suggest your 18-month vacation in civilian life needs to come to an end." Maya felt the walls closing in around her. She'd known this moment would arrive eventually, but she'd hoped to have more warning, more time to prepare. The scar on her ribcage seemed to throb with phantom pain, a reminder of the last time she'd trusted James Harrison. "My unit is dead," she said quietly. "All of them, thanks to your intelligence." "That's what we need to discuss," Harrison replied. "Because it turns out that might not be entirely accurate." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. For 18 months, she'd carried the weight of being the sole survivor, mourning teammates she thought were dead. Sleepless nights reliving those final moments in the Syrian compound. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her careful composure finally cracking. Harrison's smile widened. "Sergeant Tommy Morrison, Corporal Jessica Vance, Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez." Ring any bells? Those names were burned into Maya's memory. Her teammates, her friends, the people she'd failed to save. "They're dead," she said firmly. "I saw their bodies. Did you?" Harrison tilted his head. "Or did you see what you were meant to see?" Maya's mind raced. She remembered the chaos of that night, the explosions, the gunfire, the smoke and confusion. She'd been separated from her team during the initial assault, and by the time she'd fought her way back to their position, the building was collapsing around her. She'd seen bodies, yes, but in the darkness and destruction. "You're lying," she said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. "Am I? Then explain this." Harrison nodded to one of his agents, who produced a tablet and handed it to Maya. The screen showed a series of photographs taken with a telephoto lens. The images were grainy, clearly surveillance shots taken from a considerable distance, but the faces were unmistakable. Tommy Morrison, alive and walking through what looked like a European city street. Jessica Vance, sitting at an outdoor cafe. Very much not dead. Michael Rodriguez, emerging from what appeared to be a hotel lobby. Maya's hands shook as she scrolled through the images. Each photograph was timestamped within the last 6 months. Her teammates, her dead teammates, were not only alive but seemed to be living quite comfortably. "Where?" she whispered. "Various locations across Eastern Europe," Harrison said. "Prague, Budapest, Bucharest. They've been moving around, but we've been tracking them." "Why?" The question came out as barely more than a breath. "That's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?" Harrison moved closer, his voice dropping to a conversational tone. "Why would 3 members of an elite Delta Force unit fake their own deaths and disappear? What could they be running from? Or perhaps more accurately, what could they be running toward?" Maya looked up from the tablet, her dark eyes blazing with a mixture of rage and betrayal. "You think they sold us out? I think someone sold you." "Out," Harrison corrected. "The question is whether it was your teammates, someone higher up the chain, or—" He let the implication hang in the air. "Or me." Maya's voice was deadly quiet. "The thought had occurred to us. After all, you're the only confirmed survivor of an operation that went catastrophically wrong. You disappeared for 18 months, without making contact with any official channels. And now you're attempting to cross the border illegally with forged documentation." Maya set the tablet down carefully on the examination table, her movements controlled and precise. She was calculating distances, angles, potential weapons. The 2 agents flanking Harrison were armed, but they were standing too close together. If she moved fast enough, ... "I wouldn't," Harrison said mildly, apparently reading her thoughts. "We're not your enemies, Maya. At least not necessarily. Then what are you? We're the people who want to find out what really happened in Syria. And more importantly, we want to find out what your former teammates are planning to do next." Harrison pulled out his phone and showed Maya another image. This one was a satellite photograph of a military installation she didn't recognize. 3 days ago, someone broke into a classified weapons depot in Romania. The thieves were professionals. They knew exactly what they were looking for and how to get it. They took approximately 50 pounds of C4 explosive, military-grade detonators, and a selection of untraceable small arms. Maya's blood chilled. "You think it was them? The timing is suspicious. And the level of skill required suggests military training, elite military training. That doesn't prove anything." "No, it doesn't. But combined with their presence in the region and their apparent comfort with living under false identities," Harrison shrugged, "it paints a concerning picture." Maya stared at the satellite image, her mind racing through possibilities. If her teammates were alive, if they had stolen military explosives, what could they be planning? And more importantly, why hadn't they tried to contact her? "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "We want you to find them," Harrison said simply. "You know them better than anyone. You know how they think, how they operate. If anyone can track them down and figure out what they're planning, it's you. And if I refuse?" Harrison's expression hardened. "Then you can explain to a federal judge why you've been living under a false identity for the past 18 months. Immigration fraud, falsifying federal documents, conspiracy to commit. I get the picture," Maya cut him off. She was trapped. And they both knew it. There's something else, Harrison added, his tone becoming almost sympathetic. We have reason to believe that whatever your teammates are planning, it's happening soon. Within the next 2 weeks. How do you know? Because 3 days ago, the same day as the Romanian theft, someone used Jessica Vance's real identity to book a flight to the United States. The words hit Maya like a sledgehammer. If Jessica was coming back to American soil, it could only mean one thing: whatever they were planning was going to happen here. Where? Maya asked. Washington, D.C., Harrison replied. She landed yesterday morning and immediately disappeared into the city. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a familiar, unwanted cloak. Her teammates were alive, they were armed with military explosives, and they were in the nation's capital. Whatever grievances they had, whatever pain had driven them to fake their deaths and disappear, they were now a clear and present danger. If I do this, she said slowly, I want full immunity. For everything. And when it's over, I want to disappear. Again, no more surveillance, no more tracking. You let me go and pretend I never existed. Done, Harrison said without hesitation. Maya opened her eyes and looked at him steadily. And if I find them, if I stop whatever they're planning, I want the truth. All of it. What really happened in Syria, who sold us out, and why? Harrison hesitated for just a moment. The truth might be more complicated than you're prepared for. I'll take that risk. Very well. Harrison extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Maya stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment. She thought about the quiet life she'd been building, the small apartment she'd rented under a false name, the job at the restaurant where nobody asked questions about her past. All of that was over now, probably forever, but her teammates were alive, and they were planning something that could hurt innocent people. Whatever else had happened, whatever betrayals had led them to this point, she couldn't let that stand. She shook Harrison's hand. We have a deal, she said, but I do this my way. Of course, Harrison agreed. We'll provide you with backup support, intelligence, whatever you need. No, Maya said firmly. No backup, no surveillance, no handlers. I work alone. Harrison frowned. Maya, these are dangerous people. If they've gone rogue, they're my people, she interrupted. Or they were. Either way, this is personal now. And personal operations require a personal touch. After a moment, Harrison nodded. Fine, but you'll check in every 24 hours. And if things go sideways, they won't, Maya said with more confidence than she felt. One of the agents handed her a phone and a wallet containing cash and a new identity, Sarah Martinez, according to the driver's license. The irony of the name wasn't lost on her, given the Border Patrol officer who'd helped expose her. Your flight to D.C. leaves in 4 hours, Harrison said. We've arranged accommodations and basic resources. Everything else is up to you. Maya pocketed the phone and wallet. I'll need weapons. There's a contact in Washington who can provide whatever you need. His information is in the phone. As Maya headed toward the door, Harrison called after her. Maya, for what it's worth, I hope we're wrong about your teammates. She paused without turning around. So do I, Deputy Director. Because if we're not, this is going to get very ugly very quickly. The flight to Washington gave Maya time to think, which wasn't necessarily a good thing. As the plane climbed through the clouds above Texas, she stared out the window and tried to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. 18 months ago, she'd crawled out of the rubble of a Syrian safe house, broken, bleeding, and convinced she was the only survivor of her unit. The official story, the one that existed only in the most classified files, was that Operation Blackwater had been a complete failure. Intelligence suggesting a high-value target had led Delta Force Team Bravo into an ambush. The entire team was declared Kia, The operation was buried so deep it might as well have never happened. And Maya Chen had officially died in a training accident 3 weeks later. Except Maya hadn't died. She'd been quietly discharged with enough money to disappear forever, and a clear message: forget everything. She'd tried. God knows she'd tried. But now, as she reviewed the surveillance photos on the tablet Harrison had given her, Maya realized she'd never really processed the trauma of losing her team. She'd simply buried it beneath layers of numbness and routine, the way she'd been trained to compartmentalize everything else. Tommy Morrison had been the unit's demolitions expert, a farm boy from Iowa with a gift for making things explode with surgical precision. He'd also been the team comedian, always ready with a joke to break tension or lift spirits during long, difficult missions. Maya remembered him talking about his plans after the military. He wanted to go back to Iowa, take over his family's farm, maybe start a family of his own. Jessica Vance had been their communications specialist and backup sniper. Tough as nails and twice as sharp. She'd grown up in inner-city Detroit and joined the military to escape a cycle of poverty and violence. She'd been working on her college degree during her downtime, planning to become a teacher when she finished her service. Maya had helped her with her statistics homework just 2 days before the mission. Michael Rodriguez, no relation to the Border Patrol officer, had been their medic and the unofficial team psychologist. A former gang member from Los Angeles who'd turned his life around, he'd had a gift for reading people and situations. He'd saved Maya's life at least 3 times during their deployments together, not just physically but emotionally, talking her through the dark moments that came with their line of work. These weren't cold-blooded killers or mercenaries. They were her friends, her family, the people she'd trusted with her life countless times. So what had happened to them? Maya opened the classified file Harrison had provided on the plane. It contained everything the government knew about her teammates' activities since Operation Blackwater, which wasn't much. The first confirmed sighting had been Tommy Morrison in Prague 6 months ago, caught on a security camera outside a bank. Then Jessica in Budapest 3 weeks later. Michael had been spotted in Bucharest just last week. The pattern suggested they were working together, moving in a coordinated fashion across Eastern Europe. But the stolen explosives and Jessica's flight to Washington added a new, troubling dimension to their activities. As the plane began its descent into Reagan National Airport, Maya made a decision. She wouldn't approach this mission with the assumption that her teammates had gone rogue. Instead, she'd operate on the theory that something else was happening, something that had forced them to fake their deaths and disappear. The question was, what? Maya's first stop in Washington wasn't to check into the safe house Harrison's people had arranged. Instead, she took a taxi to Georgetown and walked the streets for 2 hours, using every counter-surveillance technique she'd learned. During her years in special operations, she was clean. No one was following her, which meant either Harrison was keeping his word about letting her work alone, or his people were good enough that she couldn't spot them. Given the CIA's resources, either option was possible. The contact Harrison had mentioned turned out to be a man named Viktor Petrov, who ran a small electronics repair shop near DuPont Circle. The shop looked legitimate from the outside, but Maya's trained eye caught the subtle signs: reinforced door frames, strategically placed mirrors that provided sightlines to the entire interior, and most tellingly, the faint scent of gun oil beneath the smell of solder and electrical components. "Ms. Martinez," Victor said when she entered, his Russian accent thick but his English precise. "I've been expecting you." He was a compact man in his 50s with calloused hands and the kind of quiet alertness that suggested military training in his past. Maya pegged him as former Spetsnaz or GRU, probably someone who'd defected or been recruited during the chaotic years after the Soviet collapse. "What can you do for me?" Maya asked without preamble. Victor smiled and locked the front door, flipping the sign to closed. "Whatever you need within reason. Your friend was quite generous with his credit line." 20 minutes later, Maya walked out of the shop with a Glock 19 in a concealed holster, 2 extra magazines, a combat knife, basic surveillance equipment, and a selection of electronic tools that could handle everything from lockpicking to signal jamming. Everything was untraceable and completely illegal for a civilian to possess in Washington, D.C. She didn't care. Her next stop was the Marriott where Jessica Vance had stayed the night she arrived in Washington. The hotel was upscale but not ostentatious, the kind of place a business traveler might choose. Maya had learned long ago that the best way to get information from hotel staff wasn't to flash credentials or make threats. It was to look like you belonged and ask the right questions. "I'm looking for my friend Jessica," Maya told the desk clerk, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "She was supposed to meet me yesterday, but I think she might have left something in her room. I'm sorry, but I can't give out information about guests," the clerk replied automatically. Maya leaned against the counter and lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Look, I know she checked out this morning, but she's been going through a really rough divorce. Her ex has been stalking her, and she's paranoid about everything. I'm just worried about her." The clerk's expression softened slightly. Maya had read him correctly: young, empathetic, probably dealing with his own relationship drama. "I really can't," he started, then glanced around to make sure his manager wasn't watching. "What did your friend look like?" Maya described Jessica: average height, athletic build, short brown hair, distinctive scar on her left hand from a training accident years ago. "Oh, her," the clerk said with recognition. "Yeah, she seemed really nervous. Kept looking over her shoulder, you know? And she paid cash for everything, which was weird. Did you see which way she went when she left? She didn't take a taxi or anything. Just walked out with her bag and headed toward the metro station." Maya thanked him and left a generous tip. It wasn't much information, but it confirmed that Jessica was in the city and behaving like someone who didn't want to be found. The metro station led to dozens of possible destinations. Throughout the D.C. area, Maya needed a different approach. If Maya had learned anything during her years in special operations, it was that people were creatures of habit. Even when they were trying to disappear or operate under deep cover, they tended to gravitate toward familiar environments and routines. Jessica Vance had grown up in Detroit, but she'd spent 3 years stationed at Fort Beaver before joining Delta Force. During that time, she'd lived in Alexandria and had developed some strong preferences about the city. Maya remembered Jessica talking about a small coffee shop near the King Street metro station where she'd spent hours studying for her college courses. It was a long shot, but Maya had to start somewhere. The cafe was exactly as Jessica had described. It's small, quiet, with comfortable chairs and tables tucked into corners where someone could sit for hours without being bothered. Maya ordered a coffee and settled into a spot with good sight lines to the entrance and windows. She didn't have to wait long. Jessica Vance walked through the door at 3:17 p.m., and Maya felt her heart skip a beat. It was definitely her former teammate, but she looked different. Thinner, more alert, with the kind of hyper-awareness that came from months of looking over your shoulder. She'd changed her hair color from brown to black and was wearing civilian clothes. That could help her blend into any crowd. Maya watched as Jessica ordered a coffee and selected a table near the back corner, tactically sound positioning that would make it difficult for anyone to approach her without being seen. Old habits indeed. For several minutes, Maya simply observed. Jessica was alone, occasionally checking her phone, but mostly scanning the other customers with the methodical attention of someone conducting surveillance. She was waiting for something or someone. Maya made her decision. She stood up, walked over to Jessica's table, and sat down across from her without invitation. Jessica's hand moved immediately toward what Maya assumed was a concealed weapon, but she froze when she saw Maya's face. "Hello, Jess," Maya said quietly. The color drained from Jessica's face. For a moment, She looked like she was seeing a ghost, which Maya supposed she was. Maya? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. But you single quotes re ... how are you ... alive? Yeah, that seems to be going around. Jessica's eyes darted around the cafe, checking for threats, escape routes, potential witnesses. You can't be here, she said urgently. It's not safe. Not safe for whom? Me, you, or the people you're planning to hurt with 50 pounds of stolen C4. Jessica flinched as if Maya had slapped her. You don't understand what's happening. Then explain it to me. I can't. Not here. Not like this. Jessica started to stand, but Maya reached across the table and grabbed her wrist. Sit down, Maya said firmly. We're going to have this conversation whether you want to or not. The only question is whether we have it here or somewhere more private. Jessica hesitated, clearly torn between running and staying. Finally, she sat back down. How did you find me? She asked. I know you, Maya replied. I know how you think, where you feel comfortable. The real question is why you've been letting the CIA track you across Europe for the past 6 months. We haven't been, Jessica started, then stopped. They've been tracking us? Surveillance photos, satellite imagery, the works. Either you've gotten sloppy, or you wanted to be found. Jessica closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. This is so fucked up. Start from the beginning, Maya said. What happened in Syria? You know what happened in Syria? We got sold out. The whole operation was a setup. I know that part. What I don't know is how you, Tommy, and Michael managed to fake your deaths and disappear. Jessica opened her eyes and looked directly at Maya. We didn't fake our deaths, Maya. We were supposed to die in that compound, all of us, including you. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. What do you mean? The mission wasn't about capturing a high-value target. There never was a target. The whole thing was designed to eliminate our unit. Maya felt the world shift around her. That's impossible. I was there. I saw the intelligence briefings. Fabricated, Jessica said flatly. Every piece of intelligence, every satellite photo, every communication intercept. It was all manufactured to get us into that compound at the exact right time. Right time for what? For an airstrike that was supposed to level the entire building with us inside it. Maya's mind raced, but there wasn't an airstrike. The building came down from explosives planted inside. Because Michael found the charges, Jessica said. 20 minutes before they were supposed to detonate. We had just enough time to get out of the building, but not enough time to warn you. You were on the other side of the compound. The pieces began falling into place in Maya's mind. The separation from her team during the initial assault. The way the building had collapsed in a specific pattern. The fact that she'd been found unconscious in the basement rather than on the upper floors where the team was supposed to be operating. The bodies I saw ... double quotes Maya started. Locals that had been killed earlier and planted to make it look like we died in the collapse, Jessica confirmed. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure Delta Force Team Bravo ceased to exist. Maya leaned back in her chair, trying to process this information. Who? We've been trying to figure that out for 18 months, Jessica said. But we know it goes high up. Higher than Harrison, higher than anyone in the field. This came from someone with access to the most classified operations and the authority to redirect military assets. Why? Maya asked. Why would someone want You's dead? Jessica hesitated, then pulled out her phone and showed Maya a photograph. It was a document, partly obscured, but clearly official, with letterhead from the Department of Defense. Because we found something we weren't supposed to find, Jessica said. Something that could bring down some very powerful people. We're deep into this incredible story now, and I hope you're as captivated as I am by these unfolding events. The amount of effort that goes into researching, writing, And narrating these novel-length stories is immense. We're talking about creating content equivalent to a published book. But it's worth it to bring you stories that truly engage and transport you to another world. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please take a second to like this video and share it with friends who appreciate great storytelling. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating these detailed, epic narratives. We still have so much more to discover together. So let's see how this situation unfolds. The document on Jessica's phone was partially redacted, but Maya could make out enough to understand its significance. It was a classified memo detailing something called Operation Clean House, a systematic elimination of military personnel who had gained access to sensitive information about illegal arms sales to Syrian rebel groups. "Where did you get this?" Maya asked, handing the phone back. "Tommy found it in the CIA station chief's safe in Damascus, 2 days before our final mission," Jessica said. "We were supposed to be providing security for a weapons inspection, remember? Routine stuff. But Tommy got curious about some inconsistencies in the manifests." Maya remembered that mission. It had seemed straightforward escort some Pentagon officials while they conducted an audit of weapons transfers to supposed allies in the Syrian conflict. The kind of boring bureaucratic assignment that usually fell to regular army units, not Delta Force. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Maya asked. "Missing serial numbers, quantities that didn't match shipping records, weapons showing up in the hands of groups that weren't on the approved recipient list." Jessica ticked off on her fingers. "Tommy started taking pictures, and that's when he found the safe, and the memo spelled it out in black and white. A deliberate program to sell advanced American weapons to anyone willing to pay, regardless of their affiliations or intentions. We're talking anti-tank missiles, advanced rifle systems, even some experimental stuff that wasn't supposed to exist." Maya felt sick. How high up did it go? High enough that they decided it was easier to eliminate an entire Delta Force unit than risk exposure, Jessica said grimly. The memo mentioned assets with excessive operational knowledge that needed to be retired permanently. "Jesus Christ, it gets worse," Jessica continued. "The weapons weren't just being sold to Syrian groups. We found evidence of sales to organizations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, anywhere there was chaos and people willing to pay cash for American military hardware." Maya stared at her former teammate, trying to reconcile this information with everything she thought she knew about their final mission. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't any of you try to contact me after you escaped?" Jessica's expression grew pained. "We thought you were dead, Maya. We saw the building come down and figured no one could have survived. It wasn't until 6 months later that we learned you were alive. And by then, by then what? By then we'd already started planning our revenge." The words hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Maya felt her blood turn cold. "The explosives," she said. Jessica nodded. 50 pounds of C4, military-grade detonators, and enough small arms to outfit a squad. "We've been planning this for over a year." "Planning what, exactly?" "To make the people responsible pay for what they did. To expose the truth about Operation Clean House and bring down everyone involved." Maya leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Jess, whatever you're planning, this isn't the way. You can't just..." "Can't what?" Jessica interrupted, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. "Can't seek justice for the people who tried to murder us? Can't expose war crimes that are still happening? Can't make sure other soldiers don't get sacrificed to protect some politicians' profits? This won't bring justice," Maya said firmly. "This will just make you terrorists." Jessica's eyes flashed with anger. "We're already dead, Maya. Officially, we don't exist. We can't go to the media, we can't go to Congress, we can't go to anyone in the military or intelligence community, because we don't know how high the corruption goes. The only language these people understand is force. So you're planning to kill people? We're planning to send a message, Jessica corrected. A very public, very dramatic message that will force the media and the public to pay attention to what's been happening. Maya studied her former teammate's face, seeing the pain and rage that had been festering for 18 months. What kind of message? Jessica hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's a private defense contractor called Blackwater Solutions, no relation to our operation. Just an unfortunate coincidence in names. They've been the middleman for most of the illegal arms sales. Tomorrow night, they're hosting a charity gala at the Kennedy Center. All the major players will be there, Pentagon officials, CIA brass, defense industry executives, even some senators on the Armed Services Committee. Maya's blood ran cold. You're planning to bomb the Kennedy Center? We're planning to expose them, Jessica said. During the gala, when all the cameras are rolling and the media is paying attention, we're going to present evidence of their crimes. The explosives are just to make sure we have everyone's attention and that they can't just walk away or cover it up. Jess, that's insane. Even if you don't hurt anyone, you'll be labeled terrorists. And if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Jessica said with the kind of confidence that worried Maya more than fear would have. We've been planning this for months. We know the building layout, the security protocols, the guest list. Tommy has the demolitions expertise to place charges that will create maximum psychological impact with minimal casualties. Minimal casualties? Maya grabbed Jessica's wrist again. You're talking about taking hostages at the Kennedy Center. Do you have any idea how this will end? It will end with the truth finally coming out, Jessica said, pulling free from Maya's grip. And with the people responsible being held accountable for their crimes. Maya sat back, her mind racing through tactical scenarios. A hostage situation at the Kennedy Center would bring every law enforcement agency in Washington down on them within minutes. Even if Jessica and her teammates managed to get their message out, they'd be dead or in prison within hours. There has to be another way, Maya said. We tried other ways, Jessica replied. Michael spent 6 months trying to contact journalists, human rights organizations, even some congressmen who supposedly cared about military accountability. Know what happened? Nothing. Either they didn't believe him, or they were too scared to investigate, or they were already bought and paid for. What about Tommy? Is he on board with this? Jessica's expression flickered slightly. Tommy has some concerns about the approach, but he understands that we don't have any other options. Maya caught the hesitation. Concerns? He's worried about civilian casualties. But we've planned everything to minimize risk to innocent people. And Michael? Michael is... Jessica paused, choosing her words carefully. Michael has been having a hard time since Syria. PTSD, nightmares, the whole package. This mission is his chance to find some peace. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. A traumatized soldier with access to military explosives and a death wish was a dangerous combination. I need to talk to them, Maya said. That's not possible. Why not? Because they don't know you're alive, Jessica admitted. I was supposed to be conducting reconnaissance today, not having a reunion with a dead teammate. Maya stared at her. They don't know? We thought you were dead, Maya. When I saw you walk into this cafe, I thought I was hallucinating. How was I supposed to explain that to the others? You tell them the truth. The truth is complicated right now, Jessica said. Tommy and Michael are in a very specific headspace about this mission. Learning that you're alive and working for the people who tried to kill us, that could derail everything. I'm not working for them, Maya said firmly. I'm trying to stop you from making a terrible mistake. From their perspective, that's the same thing. Maya leaned forward again, her voice urgent. Jess, listen to me. Whatever evidence you have, whatever proof you've collected about these arms sales, I can help you get it to the right people. There are ways to expose this without taking hostages or threatening civilians. Really? Jessica's voice was skeptical. And who exactly are the right people in your opinion? The same government that tried to murder us? The same media that ignores war crimes when they're inconvenient? The same Congress that gets campaign contributions from defense contractors? Maya didn't have a good answer for that, and Jessica could see it in her face. Face it, Maya, Jessica continued. The system is broken. The only way to fix it is to break it open and force people to see what's inside. By threatening innocent people. By doing whatever it takes, Jessica corrected. The people at that gala tomorrow night aren't innocent. They're war profiteers who've gotten rich selling weapons to terrorists and dictators. They deserve whatever happens to them. Maya could see that Jessica had rationalized every aspect of this operation, convinced herself that she was fighting the good fight against an irredeemably corrupt system. It was the kind of thinking that led good soldiers down very dark paths. Where are Tommy and Michael now? Maya asked. Jessica checked her watch. They should be conducting their final reconnaissance of the Kennedy Center. The gala starts at 7 tomorrow night, and we go live at 8:30, right when the keynote speaker takes the stage. Who's the keynote speaker? Deputy Secretary of Defense Jonathan Blackwood, one of the main architects of the illegal arms program. Maya knew that name. Blackwood was a career Pentagon official with a reputation for efficiency and ruthless pragmatism. If he was involved in illegal arms sales, it would explain why the cover-up had been so thorough. I need to talk to Tommy and Michael, Maya said again. I told you, that's not possible right now. Then I need you to call off this operation. Jessica shook her head. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, I couldn't. Tommy and Michael have been living for this mission for 18 months. It's the only thing that's kept them going. And what? About you, what's kept you going? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. Anger, she said finally. Pure, concentrated anger at the people who tried to kill us and at the system that protects them. Maya could understand that anger. She'd felt it herself during the dark months after Syria, when she'd struggled to rebuild her life while carrying the weight of losing her entire team. But anger was a poison that destroyed everything it touched if you held onto it too long. Jess, she said gently, this won't bring you peace. Even if everything goes exactly according to plan, even if you expose every corrupt official in war, profiteer in Washington, it won't heal what was done to us in Syria. Maybe not, Jessica agreed. But it will make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Maya could see that her former teammate was beyond reason on this point. 18 months of planning and preparation had hardened Jessica's resolve into something unbreakable. What happens now? Maya asked. Now you walk away, Jessica said. You go back to whatever life you've built for yourself and pretend this conversation never happened. You know I can't do that. Then you have a choice to make, Jessica said, standing up from the table. You can try to stop us and become another obstacle to be removed, or you can help us and maybe save some lives in the process. That's not a choice, that's an ultimatum. Welcome to the real world, Maya. Sometimes ultimatums are all we have left. Jessica walked away without looking back, leaving Maya alone at the table with her cold coffee and the terrible knowledge that in less than 24 hours, her former teammates were planning to turn the Kennedy Center into a war zone. Maya sat in the cafe for another 20 minutes after Jessica left, trying to process everything she'd learned. The illegal arms sales, the attempted murder of her unit, the planned attack on the Kennedy Center. It was almost too much to absorb. But one thing was clear, she had to stop them. The question was how. Jessica had made it clear that Tommy and Michael didn't know Maya was alive, which meant approaching them directly could be dangerous for everyone involved. Traumatized soldiers who thought they were seeing a ghost might react unpredictably. Maya pulled out the phone Harrison had given her and considered calling for backup. The CIA could flood the Kennedy Center with security, evacuate the building, maybe even capture her teammates before they could execute their plan. But that would also mean the end of any chance to expose the truth about Operation Clean House and the illegal arms sales. Jessica was right about one thing: the system was designed to protect itself, and without dramatic public attention, any evidence they'd collected would disappear into classified files, never to be seen again. Maya made her decision. She wouldn't call Harrison yet. Instead, she'd try to find Tommy and Michael herself and see if she could talk them out of this operation. If that failed, she'd have to consider more direct action. Her first stop was the Kennedy Center itself. If Tommy and Michael were conducting reconnaissance, there was a chance she might spot them. The Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts sat on the banks of the Potomac River like a modern temple, its white marble facade gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Maya approached from the north, using tourist foot traffic as cover while she scanned for familiar faces. The building was already bustling with activity as staff prepared for tomorrow night's gala. Caterers, security personnel, and event planners moved in and out of the various entrances, providing perfect cover for anyone conducting surveillance. Maya bought a ticket for an evening performance and entered through the main lobby, using the opportunity to study the building's layout and security measures. The Kennedy Center was a challenging target: multiple levels, numerous entrances and exits, and a complex internal structure that would make any tactical operation difficult to control. But it was also a soft target in terms of security. Unlike government buildings or military installations, the Kennedy Center relied primarily on civilian security guards and metal detectors at the entrances. Against trained special operations soldiers with inside knowledge of the building, those measures would be largely ineffective. Maya spent an hour walking through the building, noting camera positions, emergency exits, and potential choke points. She also looked for signs of her teammates but saw nothing obvious. If Tommy and Michael were here, they were being careful to blend in. As she was leaving through the parking garage, Maya spotted something that made her freeze: a white panel van parked in the far corner of the lowest level, away from the main traffic flow. The vehicle itself wasn't suspicious, but its position was perfect for someone who wanted to bring equipment into the building without being observed. Maya approached the van carefully, using other parked cars as cover. As she got closer, she could see that the rear windows were tinted and that someone had placed a small piece of tape over the license plate. A classic surveillance technique to prevent the plate from being read clearly by security cameras. She was about 20 feet away when the van's engine started. Maya ducked behind a concrete pillar as the van backed out of its parking space and headed for the exit. She got a brief glimpse of the driver, a man with short dark hair and a build that could have been Tommy Morrison. The van disappeared up the ramp before Maya could get a better look, but she'd seen enough. Her teammates were definitely preparing for tomorrow night's operation. Maya returned to her rental car and drove to the safe house Harrison's people had arranged, a small apartment in Arlington that was clean, comfortable, and completely anonymous. She needed time to think and plan. The apartment was on the third floor of a generic mid-rise building, the kind of place that housed government contractors, junior diplomats, and other people who needed temporary housing in the D.C. area. Maya checked for surveillance devices out of habit but found none. Either Harrison was keeping his word about letting her work alone, or his people were better at hiding their equipment than she was at finding it. Maya spread out everything she knew on the apartment's small dining table: photographs of her teammates, surveillance reports from their time in Europe, floor plans of the Kennedy Center that she'd downloaded from the building's website, and a guest list for tomorrow night's gala that she'd managed to obtain through some creative internet searching. The guest list was a who's who of the military-industrial complex: defense contractors, Pentagon officials, CIA leadership, members of Congress, and various lobbyists and consultants. If Jessica was right about the scope of the illegal arms sales, many of these people were either involved directly or had turned a blind eye to the crimes. Maya understood her teammates' anger. These people had gotten rich while soldiers died, carrying out missions based on corrupt intelligence and illegal operations. The system protected them while people like Delta Force Team Bravo were considered expendable, but taking hostages at the Kennedy Center wouldn't solve anything. It would just give the corrupt officials an excuse to crack down even harder on dissent and label anyone who questioned military operations as potential terrorists. Maya picked up the phone Harrison had given her and stared at it for a long moment. One call would bring in federal resources that could stop the attack, but it would also mean the end of any chance for justice regarding Operation Cleanhouse. She set the phone down without making the call. Instead, Maya opened her laptop and began researching everything she could find about Deputy Secretary of Defense Jonathan Blackwood and the other key figures who would be at tomorrow night's gala. If she was going to stop her teammates without destroying their chance for justice, she needed to understand exactly who they were targeting and why. Jonathan Blackwood's official biography read like a textbook. Example of a successful Washington career: Georgetown University, Harvard Law School, junior positions at the Pentagon during the Clinton administration, private sector work with defense contractors during the Bush years, and a return to government service under Obama. He'd built a reputation as a pragmatic problem solver who could navigate the complex relationships between the military, Congress, and the defense industry. But as Maya dug deeper into news articles and congressional testimony, a different picture began to emerge. Blackwood had been present at every major decision point in recent military operations, always advocating for increased use of private contractors and expanded weapons sales to allied forces. He'd testified before Congress dozens of times, always with reassurances that proper oversight was in place and that American weapons were only going to vetted, trustworthy recipients. Maya found a particularly damning piece of testimony from 2 years ago, when Blackwood had assured the Senate Armed Services Committee that new tracking systems would prevent American weapons from falling into the wrong hands. Just 6 months later, those same weapons had been used in attacks against American forces in Afghanistan. The pattern was clear. Blackwood had been systematically dismantling oversight mechanisms while expanding weapons sales programs, creating exactly the kind of environment where corruption could flourish. Before Maya could dig deeper into her research, she paused to reflect on the complexity of what lay ahead. This investigation was requiring the kind of deep, methodical work that takes countless hours to get right, the same dedication we put into crafting these detailed stories for you. If you're finding yourself drawn into this intricate web of conspiracy and betrayal, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who appreciate carefully plotted narratives. Your support through likes, shares, and subscriptions helps us continue bringing you these immersive, novel-length stories that unfold like real investigations. Now back to Maya's dangerous evening. Maya single quotes S research was interrupted by a knock at the apartment door. She drew her Glock and approached carefully, checking the PEEPHOL. A delivery man stood in the hallway holding a small package. "Delivery for Sarah Martinez," he called out. Maya hadn't ordered anything, which meant the package was either from Harrison's people or from someone else who knew her current location and alias. Neither possibility was reassuring. She waited until the delivery man left, then opened the door and carefully examined the package. It was small, light, and showed no signs of tampering. The return address was for a local courier service. Inside the package was a burner phone and a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Maya, we need to talk. Alone. Lincoln Memorial, 10 p.m. Come unarmed. Tommy Morrison." Somehow he'd found her, figured out where she was staying, and wanted to meet. The fact that he'd specified unarmed suggested he wasn't planning to hurt her, but it could also be a trap. Maya checked her watch. 8:30 p.m. The Lincoln Memorial was a 20-minute drive, which gave her time to prepare. She considered calling Harrison and setting up backup surveillance for the meeting, but decided against it. If Tommy was genuinely willing to talk, the presence of CIA operatives would destroy any chance of reaching him. Instead, Maya prepared for the possibility that this was an ambush. She left the Glock in the apartment, but took the combat knife, concealing it in her boot where it wouldn't be detected by a casual search. She also activated a GPS tracker on her phone and set it to automatically send her location to Harrison. If she didn't check in by midnight, the drive to the Lincoln Memorial took her through the heart of Washington, past the White House and the various monuments that represented the ideals the country was supposed to stand for. Maya wondered what Abraham Lincoln would think about military officers planning to take hostages to expose government corruption. Would he see it as justified resistance against tyranny, or as an inexcusable attack on innocent people? The Lincoln Memorial at night was both magnificent and somehow melancholy, its white marble columns illuminated against the dark sky. Maya parked several blocks away and approached on foot, using the shadows and landscaping to conceal her movement while she scanned for threats. Tommy Morrison was sitting on the steps of the memorial, a small figure dwarfed by the massive structure. He looked older than Maya remembered, with new lines around his eyes and a weariness that seemed to go bone-deep. Maya approached from his left side, where he could see her coming without feeling threatened. "Hello, Tommy," she said softly as she sat down beside him. He didn't seem surprised to see her, which meant he'd been watching her approach. "Maya Chen," he said, his Iowa accent still strong after all these years. "Back from the dead." "Apparently. That's going around." Tommy smiled slightly at that. "Jessica told me about your conversation this afternoon. She's pretty shook up about seeing you. What about you?" "Me? I'm just tired," Tommy said. "Tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of living with what we know while the people responsible go on with their lives like nothing happened." Maya studied his profile in the dim light. Tommy had always been the most emotionally stable member of their unit, the one who could stay calm under pressure and find humor in the darkest situations. But 18 months of life underground had clearly taken their toll. "Jessica told me about the arms sales," Maya said. "About Operation Clean House. Did she tell you about the other thing we found?" Tommy asked. "What other thing?" Tommy reached into his jacket slowly, telegraphing his movements to avoid startling Maya. He pulled out a tablet and showed her a document she hadn't seen before. It was another classified memo, this one detailing something called Permanent Asset Retirement Protocol. Maya read through it with growing horror as she realized what it described: a systematic program for eliminating military personnel who had gained access to compromising information about illegal operations. "Delta Force Team Bravo wasn't the first," Tommy said quietly. "There have been at least 6 other training accidents and mission failures in the past 3 years, all involving special operations personnel who had worked on sensitive assignments related to weapons transfers or classified contracting operations." Maya felt sick. How many people? 37 soldiers, all declared Kia in various operations that were immediately classified beyond any normal security review. Jesus Christ. "The protocol is still active, Maya, which means as long as we're alive, we're targets. And so are you, now that you know about it." Maya handed the tablet back, her hands shaking slightly. "Where did you get this?" "Michael hacked into a Pentagon database last month. Turns out that medic training included some pretty advanced computer skills that he never mentioned to any of us." Maya thought about Michael Rodriguez, remembering him as the steady, reliable medic who always seemed to know exactly what to say to keep the team focused. The idea of him as a computer hacker was jarring but not entirely surprising. Michael had always been smarter than he let on. "Tommy," Maya said carefully, "what you're planning tomorrow night, it's not going to solve this." "Maybe not," Tommy agreed, "but it'll sure as hell make it impossible to ignore." "At what cost?" "You're talking about taking hostages, threatening civilians. The civilians at that gala aren't innocent bystanders," Tommy interrupted, his voice hardening. "They're the ones who've been profiting from these illegal operations. They're the ones who've been covering up the murders of American soldiers. That doesn't give you the right to threaten their lives." Tommy was quiet for a long moment, staring up at the massive statue of Lincoln. "You know what I've been thinking about sitting here," he said finally. "That speech Lincoln gave during the Civil War, about how sometimes you have to destroy something in order to save it. That's not what he said. Close enough." Tommy turned to look at her directly. "Maya, we tried doing this the right way. We tried going through proper channels, tried finding people in the system who would listen to us. You know what happened? Nothing. Worse than nothing, we put ourselves on their radar and had to go even deeper underground." "So your solution is to become terrorists?" "Our solution is to force the truth into the open," Tommy corrected. "To make it impossible for them to bury this story the way they've buried all the others." Maya could hear the conviction in his voice, the absolute certainty that this was the only path forward. It was the same tone he'd used during their deployment when he was explaining how to place explosives for maximum effect, clinical, professional, and utterly without doubt. "What about Michael?" Maya asked. "How is he handling all this?" Tommy's expression darkened. "Michael's not doing well, Maya. The PTSD, the nightmares, the guilt over what happened to us. It's eating him alive. This mission is the only thing that's given him any sense of purpose." "That's exactly why you should call it off," Maya said urgently. "A traumatized soldier with access to explosives is a recipe for disaster. What if something goes wrong? What if he snaps under pressure?" "He won't," Tommy said, but Maya caught the uncertainty in his voice. "You can't know that. None of us can predict how someone will react in a high-stress situation when they're already dealing with severe psychological trauma." Tommy stood up abruptly and walked to the edge of the memorial steps. "So what are you suggesting, Maya? That we just give up? That we let the people who tried to kill us continue operating with impunity?" "I'm suggesting there might be other ways to get justice." "Like what?" "Working with the same CIA that tried to have us eliminated? Trusting the same government that's been systematically murdering its own soldiers?" Maya joined him at the edge of the steps. "Like finding journalists who can't be bought or intimidated. Like building a coalition of military families who've lost loved ones in suspicious circumstances. Like using social media and independent platforms to get the story out without relying on traditional gatekeepers." "We tried some of that," Tommy sighed. "The journalists either didn't believe us or were too scared to investigate. The military families don't want to hear that their loved ones might have been murdered by their own government. And social media posts about classified operations tend to disappear pretty quickly." Maya had to admit he had a point. The system was designed to protect itself, and isolated individuals, even ones with compelling evidence, rarely managed to break through the walls of secrecy and institutional protection. "What about me?" Maya asked. "I'm officially dead, which means I have nothing to lose by going public." You could end up actually dead this time," Tommy interrupted. "Maya, they tried to kill all of us once. What makes you think they won't try again? Because now we know they're coming." Tommy shook his head. "You still don't get it. These people have unlimited resources and the full backing of the national security apparatus. They can make anyone disappear, discredit any evidence, silence any witness. The only way to stop them is to create a situation they can't control or cover up. By taking hostages at the Kennedy Center. By forcing the media to pay attention while we present evidence they can't ignore or dismiss. Maya could see the logic in Tommy's thinking, even if she disagreed with his methods. A dramatic hostage situation would indeed guarantee media coverage. And the evidence Jessica and her teammates had collected would be much harder to suppress if it was presented during a live television event. But the risks were enormous. Even if everything went according to plan, even if they managed to present their evidence without harming any hostages, they would still be branded as terrorists. Any message they tried to convey would be overshadowed by the methods they'd used to deliver it. "Tommy," Maya said softly, "there's something else you need to consider. Even if you succeed, even if you expose everything and bring down everyone involved in the arms sales and the cover-up, what happens to you and Jessica and Michael afterward?" "We disappear again," Tommy said simply. "Back to Europe, maybe South America, somewhere we can live quietly and let the world deal with the mess we've exposed." "You really think they'll let you walk away after this?" Tommy was quiet for a moment. "Probably not," he admitted. "But at least we'll have done something that mattered." Maya realized that Tommy and his teammates had already accepted that tomorrow night's operation would likely be their last. They weren't planning for survival. They were planning for martyrdom. "There has to be another way," Maya said desperately. "Maybe," Tommy agreed, "but we're out of time to find it. The operation goes live in 22 hours, and we've spent too much time and effort to back down now. What if I could guarantee that your evidence gets to the right people? What if I could promise that the story would come out even if you don't go through with this?" Tommy turned to look at her with something like pity in his eyes. "Maya, you're still thinking like a soldier who believes in the system. But the system is what tried to kill us. There are no right people to give the evidence to because the people in positions of authority are either corrupt themselves or too scared to challenge the ones who are." Maya felt the weight of his words settling over her like a shroud. In her heart, she knew he was right about the systemic nature of the corruption they'd uncovered. Individual bad actors could be removed or prosecuted, but what they were describing was something much larger and more entrenched. "What do you want from me?" Maya asked finally. "I want you to stay out of our way tomorrow night," Tommy said. "And if things go sideways, I want you to make sure the evidence gets out anyway." He handed her a flash drive. "Everything we've collected over the past 18 months. Names, dates, financial records, classified documents, enough to bring down half the Pentagon if it's presented properly." Maya took the drive, feeling its weight both physically and metaphorically. "Tommy, promise me, Maya, if we don't make it out of tomorrow night, promise me you'll find a way to make this matter." Maya looked into the eyes of her former teammate and saw the same determination that had carried him through countless dangerous missions. He'd made his choice, and nothing she could say would change his mind. "I promise," she said. Tommy smiled sadly. "Take care of yourself, Maya, and try not to think too badly of us when this is all over." He walked away into the darkness, leaving Maya alone with the flash drive and the terrible knowledge that in less than 24 hours, the Kennedy Center would become a battleground. Maya drove back to her apartment in a daze, Tommy's words echoing in her mind. The flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket, its contents representing years of evidence that could expose massive corruption, but might never see the light of day if her teammates' plan failed. Back in the apartment, Maya plugged the drive into her laptop and began reviewing its contents. What she found was even more damning than she'd expected. The files contained detailed financial records showing millions of dollars in unauthorized weapons, sales flowing through shell companies controlled by defense contractors. There were email exchanges between Pentagon officials and arms dealers, discussing which rebel groups would pay the highest prices for specific weapon systems. Most chilling of all, there were planning documents for Operation Clean House that spelled out not just the elimination of Delta Force Team Bravo, but ongoing operations to retire other military personnel who had gained access to sensitive Information.Maya cross-referenced the names in the emails with the guest list for tomorrow night's gala. Nearly a dozen of the key figures in the arms sales conspiracy would be in attendance, including Deputy Secretary Blackwood and several other high-ranking Pentagon officials. As she scrolled through the evidence, Maya began to understand why her teammates felt that dramatic action was necessary. This wasn't just corruption or profiteering, it was systematic betrayal of the military by its own leadership, funded by the sale of American weapons to anyone willing to pay, regardless of their affiliations or intentions. But she also saw the fatal flaw in their plan. Even with all this evidence, even with a dramatic presentation during a hostage situation, the story could still be suppressed or spun by the same people who had covered up the original crimes. The media might focus on the terrorist attack rather than the evidence being presented. The public might be more concerned about the threat to innocent people than the corruption of their government. Maya needed a different approach. She picked up the phone Harrison had given her and stared at it for a long moment. One call would bring in federal resources to stop the attack, but it would also likely result in the deaths of her teammates and the burial of all their evidence. Instead, Maya powered up the burner phone Tommy had sent her and began typing a message. Change of plans. Meet me at the old location tomorrow at 1600. Trust me. She sent the message to 3 different numbers she'd found in Tommy's phone records, hoping that at least one of them would reach Jessica or Michael. Then Maya opened her laptop and began drafting something that might save everyone's lives while still exposing the truth about Operation Clean House. Maya's modified plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Instead of trying to stop her teammates' operation directly, she would give them an alternative that might achieve their goals without turning them into terrorists. She spent the next 4 hours crafting a comprehensive media package based on the evidence Tommy had given her. The package included executive summaries that civilian journalists could understand, supporting documentation that proved the scope of the corruption, and a narrative that connected the illegal arms sales to the attempted murder of Delta Force. Team Bravo. More importantly, Maya had identified 3 investigative journalists with proven track records of challenging the military-industrial complex and getting their stories published despite government pressure. One worked for the Washington Post, another for the New York Times, and the third for an independent news organization that specialized in national security issues. Maya's plan was to present this evidence packaged to all 3 journalists simultaneously, creating enough momentum that the story couldn't be suppressed even if government officials tried to intimidate or silence individual reporters. But first, she had to convince her teammates to delay their operation long enough for this alternative approach to work. The old location Maya had referenced in her message was a safe house the team had used during a training exercise 2 years earlier, a small cabin in the mountains of West Virginia, about an hour's drive from Washington. If her teammates remembered the location and trusted her enough to meet her there, she might be able to talk them out of their Kennedy Center plan. Maya packed her gear and checked out of the Arlington apartment, leaving no trace of her presence, except for a note hidden behind the bathroom mirror, a message for Harrison in case something went wrong, and he needed to know what she'd discovered. The drive to West Virginia took her through increasingly rural terrain as she left the urban sprawl of Washington behind. The cabin was exactly as she remembered it, isolated, defensible, and completely off the grid. Perfect for a conversation that could determine the fate of everyone involved. Maya arrived at 3:30 p.m. and spent 30 minutes checking the surrounding area for signs of surveillance or ambush. The location appeared clean, but she remained alert. As she settled in to wait, Jessica arrived first, driving a nondescript sedan and approaching with the caution of someone who'd spent 18 months living underground. She parked 50 yards from the cabin and walked the rest of the way, her hand resting on what Maya assumed was a concealed weapon. "This better be good, Maya," Jessica said as she entered the cabin. "We've spent months planning tonight's operation. And we're not going to abandon it without a very compelling reason. I have a compelling reason, Maya replied. I have a way to get your evidence to the public without turning you into criminals. Tommy and Michael arrived together 20 minutes later, and Maya felt her heart clench when she saw Michael Rodriguez. Her former teammate looked gaunt and hollow-eyed, with the kind of hypervigilance that suggested severe PTSD. His hands shook slightly as he scanned the cabin for threats, and Maya noticed that he flinched at sudden sounds. "Maya," Michael said softly when he saw her. We all thought you were dead." "I'm very much alive," Maya replied gently. "And I'm here because I care about all of you and don't want to see you destroy your lives for something that might not work." "Our lives are already destroyed," Michael said bitterly. "We're officially dead, remember? We don't exist anymore. That doesn't mean you have to act like terrorists." "We're not terrorists," Tommy said firmly. "We're soldiers seeking justice for crimes committed against us and our fellow service members." "The media won't see it that way," Maya replied. "Neither will the public. The moment you take hostages, you lose the moral high ground and any sympathy people might have for your cause." Jessica crossed her arms. "So what's your alternative?" Maya pulled out her laptop and showed them the media package she'd prepared. Simultaneous release to 3 major news organizations, backed up by social media distribution and independent verification. No hostages, no violence, just evidence presented in a way that makes it impossible to ignore or suppress. The 3 teammates examined her work in silence, scrolling through the organized documents and strategic presentation. Maya could see them considering the possibility, weighing it against months of planning for a more dramatic approach. "It's not enough," Jessica said finally. "Without the spectacle, without the drama of a hostage situation, this will just be another story that gets buried on page 6 and forgotten within a week." "Not if we do it right," Maya insisted. "These journalists have platforms that reach millions of people, and once the story is out there, other reporters will start investigating. It'll take on a life of its own. Or it'll get killed by editorial pressure from people who don't want this information public." Tommy countered. Maya had expected this resistance. Her teammates had been planning their Kennedy Center operation for so long that it had become more than just a tactical decision. It was an emotional necessity, a way to channel their anger and trauma into direct action. "What if we could guarantee that the story gets out?" Maya asked. "What if I could promise you that within 24 hours, millions of people would know about Operation Cleanhouse and the illegal arms sales?" "How?" Michael asked, speaking for the first time since they'd started discussing alternatives. Maya took a deep breath. "By going public myself. By stepping forward as the sole survivor of Delta Force Team Bravo and telling the story from the perspective of someone who was supposed to die in Syria." The cabin fell silent as her teammates processed this offer. Maya Chen, officially dead for 18 months, publicly revealing herself as the survivor of a classified operation that had been designed to eliminate her entire unit. "Maya, no," Jessica said quietly. "That would be a death sentence. The moment you go public, they'll hunt you down and finish what they started in Syria." "Maybe," Maya agreed. "But it would also make it impossible for them to cover up the story. Dead martyrs become very inconvenient for people trying to maintain deniability." Tommy shook his head. "We can't ask you to sacrifice yourself for our mission." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Maya looked at each of her teammates in turn. "This is my choice, just like the Kennedy Center is yours. But my approach doesn't involve threatening innocent people." Michael suddenly stood up and walked to the cabin window, staring out at the forest beyond. "There's something else," he said without turning around. "Something we haven't told you about tonight's operation." Maya felt her blood chill. "What?" Jessica and Tommy exchanged glances, and Maya saw guilt and uncertainty in their expressions. "Michael," Tommy said carefully, "we agreed not to." "She deserves to know," Michael interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. If she's willing to sacrifice herself to stop us, she deserves to know everything. He turned around, and Maya saw tears in his eyes. The operation isn't just about exposing the truth, Maya. It's also about making them pay. What do you mean? The charges Tommy's been preparing, Michael said. They're not just for show. We're planning to actually detonate them. Maya felt the world shift around her. You're planning to kill people. Only the guilty ones, Jessica said quickly. Only the people directly responsible for the arms sales and the cover-up. How can you possibly ensure that? Maya demanded. The Kennedy Center will be full of innocent people staff, security guards, other guests who have nothing to do with any of this. We've planned the operation to minimize civilian casualties, Tommy said, but his voice lacked conviction. Minimize? Maya stared at him in horror. Tommy, there's no such thing as minimizing casualties when you're detonating explosives in a crowded building. People will die, and most of them will be innocent. Michael collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I know, he whispered. I know it's wrong, but I can't. I can't live with what they did to us. I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't function. The only thing that keeps me going is the thought of making them pay. Maya could see the depth of Michael's trauma, the way 18 months of anger and pain had twisted his moral compass. He was a good man who'd been broken by betrayal and was now planning to do something that would destroy whatever was left of his soul. Michael, Maya said gently, kneeling beside his chair, this won't heal you. Killing innocent people won't bring you peace or make the nightmares stop. It'll just create new trauma that will be even worse. Then what's the alternative? He asked, looking up at her with haunted eyes. How do we live with knowing what they did? How do we move forward when the people responsible are still out there, still profiting from their crimes? Maya took his hands in hers. By being better than them. By choosing justice over revenge, truth over violence. Justice? Jessica laughed bitterly. There's no justice for people like us, Maya. We're expendable assets to be discarded when we become inconvenient. Then we create our own justice, Maya replied. We expose the truth and let the public decide what to do with it. We trust that when people see the evidence of what was done to us and to other soldiers, they'll demand accountability. Tommy moved to the window where Michael had been standing. And if they don't? If the story gets buried or forgotten like all the others? If the people responsible just weather the storm and go back to business as usual? Then at least we'll have tried to do the right thing, Maya said. At least we won't have become the monsters they tried to turn us into. The cabin fell silent except for the sound of wind through the trees outside. Maya could see her teammates, wrestling with the choice between the violent confrontation they'd planned and the uncertain path of going public with their evidence. How long? Tommy asked finally. How long what? If we try your approach, how long before we know if it's working? Maya considered the question. Give me 48 hours. If I can't get the story widespread coverage and public attention within 2 days, then you can proceed with your original plan. 48 hours isn't enough, Jessica protested. Even if you get the story published, it takes time to build momentum and public pressure. Then a week, Maya offered. 7 days to see if the alternative approach can achieve what you want without the bloodshed. Tommy and Jessica looked at Michael, who was still sitting with his head in his hands. After a long moment, he looked up. I'm tired of carrying this weight, he said softly. If there's a chance to put it down without destroying everything we used to stand for, maybe we should take it. Jessica started to protest, but Tommy held up a hand. Michael's right. We became soldiers to protect innocent people, not to threaten them. If Maya's plan can expose the truth without turning us into what we've been fighting against, it's still a huge risk, Jessica said. If her approach fails, we might not get another chance. The people responsible will know we're alive and actively working against them. They'll increase security, maybe disappear entirely. That's a risk I'm willing to take, Maya said. The question is whether you are. The three teammates looked at each other, communicating in the wordless way that came from years of shared danger and mutual trust. Finally, Jessica nodded reluctantly. 1 week, she said. But if your approach doesn't work, if the story gets buried or ignored, then we go back to the original plan. Agreed, Maya said, though she had no intention of letting it come to that. There's one more condition, Tommy added. We maintain operational security until we know the outcome. No contact with outside agencies, no coordination with law enforcement or intelligence services. This stays between the four of us. Maya hesitated. She'd been planning to coordinate with Harrison's people to ensure protection for the journalists she contacted. But she could see that her teammates' trust was fragile and conditional. Agreed, she said finally. Michael stood up slowly, looking more alert than he had since arriving at the cabin. What do you need from us? Your evidence files, any additional documentation you've collected, and your word that you'll stay away from the Kennedy Center until this plays out. Jessica pulled out an external hard drive and handed it to Maya. Everything we have is on there. Financial records, classified documents, communication intercepts, enough to bring down everyone involved if it's presented properly. Maya pocketed the drive along with the flash drive Tommy had given her the night before. Where will you be? Here, Tommy said. We'll stay at the cabin until we hear from you. It's isolated enough that we won't be found unless someone knows exactly where to look. And if something happens to you? Jessica asked. Maya had been dreading this question. If I don't contact you within 72 hours, assume I've been compromised and proceed however you think best. It wasn't much of a safety net, but it was the best she could offer under the circumstances. Maya gathered her gear and prepared to leave, but Michael caught her arm as she headed for the door. Maya, he said quietly, thank you for giving us a way out of this that doesn't involve becoming everything we've fought against. Thank you for being willing to take it, she replied. As Maya drove back toward Washington, she felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a familiar burden. She had 1 week to expose one of the largest military corruption scandals in American history, protect her teammates from the consequences of their planned attack, and somehow survive the inevitable retaliation from the people she was about to expose. No pressure at all. We're approaching the climactic moments of this epic tale, and the tension is at its peak. Creating stories of this scope and detail requires not just writing talent, but careful plotting, character development, and attention to every narrative thread. We've journeyed through nearly 40,000 words together, and I hope every moment has kept you engaged. If this story has drawn you in and kept you listening, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Share this epic with anyone who loves immersive storytelling, and hit that notification bell for more incredible adventures. Now let's witness how everything comes together in these final, crucial moments. Maya S first stop back in Washington was a 24-hour internet cafe in a part of the city where cash transactions didn't raise eyebrows, and security cameras were more decorative than functional. She needed to prepare her media packages with military-grade operational security, which meant assuming that every government network was compromised. Working on a computer that had never been connected to any of her identities, Maya began crafting what might be the most important story pitch of her life. The evidence from Tommy and Jessica painted a picture of corruption that reached into the highest levels of the Pentagon and intelligence community. But she needed to present it in a way that would compel immediate action from journalists who received dozens of conspiracy theories and classified document leaks every week. Maya's military training had taught her to think like the enemy, so she put herself in the position of the corrupt officials she was about to expose. What would they do when this story broke? How would they try to discredit the evidence or silence the witnesses? The answer was troubling but predictable. They would use every resource at their disposal to destroy the credibility of anyone involved. In the exposure, Maya Chen, officially dead for 18 months, would be painted as a mentally unstable deserter who had fabricated evidence to justify her own cowardice and abandonment of duty. The journalists who published the story would face pressure from their editors, legal threats from government lawyers, and potentially trumped-up charges related to national security violations. Maya needed to make the story bulletproof before she released it. She spent 6 hours creating multiple versions of the evidence package, each tailored to a specific audience. The version for investigative journalists included detailed sourcing information and verification protocols. The version for social media distribution focused on the human cost of the corruption, the soldiers who had died because of compromised intelligence and illegal operations. The version for military audiences emphasized the betrayal of the oath to support and defend the Constitution. More importantly, Maya embedded multiple layers of verification into each package. Digital signatures that could be independently authenticated, metadata that proved the document's origins, and cross-references to publicly available information that would allow anyone to confirm the basic facts of the story. By 3 a.m., Maya had created what amounted to a comprehensive media campaign designed to break through the noise of modern information warfare and force the public to pay attention to crimes that had been hidden for years. Now came the hard part, making contact with journalists without getting herself killed in the process. Maya's first target was Sarah Chen, no relation. Despite the shared surname, an investigative reporter for the Washington Post who had built her reputation, exposing Pentagon contractor fraud. Chen had a history of protecting her sources and getting her stories published despite government pressure. Maya couldn't risk a direct approach, so she used a series of cutouts and encrypted communications to make initial contact. The message was simple: I have evidence of systematic Pentagon corruption that resulted in the murders of American soldiers. Are you interested? The response came back within 6 hours. Always interested in Pentagon stories. Need verification of credibility before proceeding. Maya had expected this. Journalists dealing with national security issues received dozens of dubious tips every week from conspiracy theorists and attention seekers. She needed to establish her bona fides without revealing her identity. She sent back a single document from Jessica's files, a partially redacted financial record showing unauthorized weapons transfers that corresponded to a story Chen had investigated 6 months earlier. The document provided crucial missing pieces to Chen's previous reporting, essentially giving her the smoking gun she'd been looking for. The response was immediate. When and where? Maya set up a meeting for that afternoon at the Hirshhorn Museum, a public location with multiple exits and enough foot traffic to provide cover. She arrived 2 hours early and spent the time conducting surveillance, looking for signs of watchers or potential threats. Sarah Chen arrived exactly on time, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of alertness that came from years of investigating people who didn't want to be investigated. Maya watched her for 20 minutes before making contact, ensuring she hadn't been followed. "Miss Chen," Maya said, approaching from behind as the journalist studied a sculpture near the museum's central courtyard. Chen turned, studying Maya with professional interest. "You're younger than I expected." "You're more cautious than I hoped," Maya replied. "That's good. You're going to need it for this story." They walked through the museum together, two women discussing art while actually negotiating one of the most sensitive intelligence leaks in recent American history. "What you sent me," Chen said quietly, "it confirms suspicions I've had for months, but I need more than financial records. I need sources who can speak on the record." "I can give you better than that," Maya replied. "I can give you a survivor." Chen stopped walking. "A survivor of what?" "Operation Blackwater." the classified mission that was designed to eliminate a Delta Force unit that had discovered evidence of the arms sales. "That's a hell of a claim," Chen said. "Can you prove it?" Maya pulled out her phone and showed Chen a photograph of her Delta Force unit patch, complete with her name and service number. Then she lifted her shirt slightly, revealing the distinctive scar on her ribcage. "Sergeant Maya Chen, Delta Force Team Bravo," she said quietly. "Officially killed in action 18 months ago in Syria. Actually left for dead by the same people. Who organized the illegal arms sales you've been investigating?" Chen stared at the scar, her journalist's instincts clearly recognizing the story that could define her career. "Jesus Christ. You're serious. Deadly serious. And I have documentation that will blow this story wide open. But I need guarantees." "What kind of guarantees?" "Protection for my sources, independent verification of all evidence before publication, and a commitment that you won't be scared off by government pressure." Chen nodded slowly. "I can work with that. What's the timeline?" 48 hours for the first story. Longer for the follow-ups. That's fast. It has to be. There are people planning to take justice into their own hands if the legal system fails them. Chen studied Maya's face, clearly trying to read between the lines. "What aren't you telling me?" Maya made a decision to trust her. "My former teammates are alive and planning to expose this corruption through dramatic means. I'm trying to give them an alternative that doesn't involve violence." "How dramatic?" "The kind that would make them terrorists instead of whistleblowers." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "All right, I'm in. But I want exclusive access until the story breaks." "Agreed. But you're not the only journalist I'm working with. This story is too important to trust to a single outlet." "Fair enough. What do you need from me?" Maya handed her encrypted flash drive. "Everything I have is on there. Review it, verify what you can independently, and call me when you're ready to move forward." "How do I reach you?" Maya gave her the number for one of her burner phones. "Don't use any government or corporate networks to research this story. Assume all communications are monitored unless you're using military-grade encryption." Chen pocketed the drive. Maya assuming this all checks out, this story will make you the most wanted person in Washington. Are you prepared for that? "I stopped being prepared for normal consequences the day my government tried to murder me," Maya replied. "Now I'm just trying to make sure the truth comes out before anyone else gets hurt." Maya's meeting with Chen was the first of 3 similar encounters over the next 24 hours. The second journalist was Marcus Webb from the New York Times, a veteran reporter who specialized in intelligence community stories. The third was Alina Vasquez from an independent news organization called The Intercept, known for publishing stories that mainstream media outlets considered too politically sensitive. Each journalist received the same evidence package, but with different emphases based on their publication's strengths and audience. Webb got the version that focused on the institutional failures and high-level corruption. Vasquez got the version that emphasized the human cost and the government's willingness to murder its own soldiers to protect corrupt operations. Maya also prepared contingency plans in case the traditional media approach failed. She had contacts in the military who might be willing to go public with supporting testimony, and she'd identified several social media influencers with large military audiences who could help amplify the story. But the real insurance policy was something she'd prepared during her time at the Internet Cafe, a comprehensive document dump that would automatically release to multiple platforms if she failed to check in with an automated system every 72 hours. If something happened to Maya, the entire story would become public knowledge whether the traditional media cooperated or not. By Wednesday evening, Maya had set in motion a process that would be very difficult for anyone to stop. The question was whether it would be enough to convince her teammates to abandon their Kennedy Center operation. Sarah Chen's story hit the Washington Post's website at 6 a.m. Thursday morning with a headline that sent shockwaves through official Washington. Classified documents reveal systematic Pentagon arms sales to terrorist groups. Maya read the article on her phone while sitting in a diner near Union Station, watching the early commuter traffic and waiting to see how quickly the government would respond. Chen had done excellent work, presenting the evidence in a clear, compelling narrative that was impossible to dismiss as conspiracy theory or foreign disinformation. The story led with the financial records showing millions of dollars in unauthorized weapons transfers, then built systematically through the documented cover-up attempts and the elimination of military personnel who had discovered the illegal operations. Chen had even managed to independently verify several of the key details through Pentagon sources who spoke on condition of anonymity. Maya's phone rang at 6:47 a.m. It was Harrison. "Where are you?" he demanded without preamble. "Reading the morning news," Maya replied calmly. "Interesting story in the Post today. We need to talk. Immediately." "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "Maya, you have no conception of the forces you've just unleashed. There are people in this city who will kill to keep this story from spreading, and right now you're the primary target." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm trying to protect you," Harrison said urgently. "Whatever deal you made with these journalists, it's not going to be enough. The people responsible for Operation Clean House have resources you can't imagine, and they're already mobilizing to contain this leak. Then they'd better move fast," Maya said. "Because this is just the beginning." She hung up before Harrison could respond and immediately powered down the phone. She'd expected government pressure, but Harrison's warning suggested the response would be more severe than she'd anticipated. Maya left the diner and began moving through the city using every counter-surveillance technique she knew. As she walked, she monitored news feeds on her tablet, watching the story spread through social media and other news outlets. By 10 a.m., the story had been picked up by CNN, Fox News, and major network television. By noon, it was trending on Twitter and Facebook. By 2 p.m., Pentagon spokesmen were holding press conferences to denounce the unverified allegations and foreign disinformation campaigns. Maya smiled grimly as she watched Defense Secretary Morrison's press conference from a coffee shop in Georgetown. The official response was exactly what she'd expected: deny everything, attack the credibility of the sources, and promise a thorough investigation that would quietly disappear in a few months. But the story had achieved something Maya hadn't dared hope for. It was forcing other sources to come forward. By Thursday evening, 3 different military officers had contacted various news outlets to provide supporting testimony about suspicious operations and missing weapons. 2 defense contractors had leaked internal emails showing knowledge of the illegal arms sales. A CIA analyst had provided documents showing attempts to cover up the Syrian operation that had targeted Maya's unit. The story was becoming too big to suppress through traditional means. Maya's burner phone buzzed with a text message from Tommy. "Watching the news, impressed. But is it enough?" Maya typed back, "Give it the full week. This is just the beginning." Friday morning brought Maya's first taste of the government's more aggressive response tactics. She woke up in a motel room in Virginia to find 2 men in suits waiting in the parking lot outside her window. They weren't trying to hide their presence. They wanted her to know she was being watched. Maya gathered her gear and left through the bathroom window, using the adjoining room's balcony to reach the ground without being detected. But as she reached her rental car, she realized the surveillance was more extensive than she'd initially thought. There were at least 6 operatives positioned around the motel, probably more that she hadn't spotted. They were professionals, military or intelligence community veterans who knew how to conduct surveillance without being obvious about it. Maya made it to her car, but knew she was now being actively tracked. The question was whether these were Harrison's people trying to protect her, or someone else's people with more hostile intentions. She found out 20 minutes later when the black SUV that had been following her suddenly accelerated and tried to ram her off the road. Maya's military training kicked in immediately. She yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, using the SUV's momentum against it as she ducked into a shopping center parking lot. The SUV overshot the turn and crashed into a concrete barrier, but Maya could see more vehicles converging on her position. She abandoned the rental car and disappeared into the crowd of Friday morning shoppers, using the chaos and confusion to evade the operatives who were now pursuing her on foot. Maya's phone rang as she ducked into a department store. "Are you all right?" It was Sarah Chen. "I'm alive," Maya replied, scanning the store for other exits. "But barely. Someone just tried to kill me." "Listen to me carefully," Chen said urgently. "The story is having more impact than we expected." 3. More news outlets have picked it up, and Congress is demanding hearings. But I'm also hearing that there's been a major mobilization of government resources to find you. What kind of mobilization? The kind that usually ends with the target disappearing permanently. Maya reached the store's rear exit and checked for pursuers before stepping outside. "How much time do I have?" "Maybe hours, maybe less." "Maya, you need to get out of Washington. Go somewhere they can't find you until this blows over." "It's not going to blow over," Maya said, "and I can't run. I have teammates who are counting on me to see this through." "Your teammates will understand if you prioritize staying alive." Maya thought about Michael's haunted eyes and Jessica's barely controlled rage. "No, they won't, and neither would I." She hung up and kept moving, using public transportation and crowded areas to stay ahead of her pursuers. But Maya knew she was fighting a losing battle. The people hunting her had unlimited resources and official backing. She could evade them for a while, but not indefinitely. Maya needed to change the rules of the game. Instead of continuing to run, Maya decided to go on the offensive. If the government was willing to use assassination squads to silence her, she would make it impossible for them to operate in secret. Maya's first stop was electronics store, where she purchased a high-definition camera, a wireless microphone, and a portable streaming device. Her second stop was an internet cafe where she set up multiple social media accounts and prepared to broadcast live footage of any attempt to capture or kill her. The technology that allowed the government to track her movements could also be used to expose their actions to the world in real time. Maya's third stop was the most dangerous, the Kennedy Center itself. She knew her teammates were still planning their operation for that evening if her media approach failed to achieve the results they wanted. But Maya had realized that the government's violent response to her leak actually proved that the story was having exactly the impact her teammates had hoped for. The question was whether she could convince them that the media approach was working before they committed to their more destructive plan. Maya approached the Kennedy Center from the river side, using tourist foot traffic as cover while she scanned for security personnel and potential surveillance. The building was clearly under heightened security in preparation for the evening's gala. But Maya's trained eye could spot the difference between normal event security and the kind of defensive preparations that suggested officials were expecting trouble. Maya activated her streaming device and began broadcasting live to multiple social media platforms. "My name is Maya Chen," she said quietly into the camera as she walked toward the Kennedy Center. 18 months ago, I was a member of Delta Force Team Bravo. My government tried to murder me and my teammates to cover up evidence of illegal arms sales and war crimes. This morning, they tried to kill me again to stop me from exposing the truth." Maya showed the camera her Delta Force identification and the distinctive scar on her ribcage as she continued walking. "In approximately 4 hours, there's going to be a gala at the Kennedy Center attended by many of the people responsible for these crimes. If something happens to me between now and then, you'll know who ordered it. And if anything happens during the gala tonight, you'll know why. The live stream was reaching thousands of viewers within minutes, with the numbers climbing rapidly as people shared the broadcast. Maya had just made it exponentially more difficult for anyone to harm her without creating a massive public relations disaster, but she'd also painted a giant target on her back. Maya's phone rang. It was Harrison again. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Making it impossible for you to murder me without the whole world watching," Maya replied, keeping the camera rolling. "We're not trying to murder you, we're trying to protect you." "From whom?" Harrison was quiet for a moment. "From people who think that killing a few journalists and former soldiers is a small price to pay for protecting a multi-billion-dollar arms trafficking operation." Maya felt her blood chill. "You're saying there are people in the government who are willing to commit mass murder to cover this up?" "I'm saying there are people with access to government resources who have already committed mass murder, and they're not going to stop now just because their crimes are being exposed. Then help me stop them." "How?" Maya looked at the Kennedy Center, its white marble facade gleaming in the afternoon sun. "By making sure tonight's gala is canceled and everyone involved in Operation Cleanhouse is arrested before anyone else gets hurt." "Maya, I don't have that kind of authority. The people you're exposing outrank me by several levels. Then find people who do have that authority." "I'm trying," Harrison said, and for the first time since Maya had known him, he sounded genuinely frightened. "But you need to understand that some of the people involved in this conspiracy have been planning for the possibility of exposure. They have contingency plans that could make tonight very ugly for everyone involved." Maya stopped walking. "What kind of contingency plans?" "The kind that involve blaming tonight's violence on foreign terrorists or domestic extremists while eliminating anyone who could contradict that narrative." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. If her teammates proceeded with their Kennedy Center operation, they would be walking into a trap designed to justify even more extreme government actions. "I have to warn them," Maya said. "Where are they?" Maya hesitated. Harrison had been trying to help her, but she still didn't know how far she could trust him. "Maya," Harrison said urgently, "if your teammates try to take action tonight, they're going to be slaughtered along with a lot of innocent people. And their deaths will be used to justify a crackdown that makes the post-9/11 security state look like a civil liberties paradise." Maya made her decision. "West Virginia. There's a cabin about an hour from the city. Send me the coordinates. I'll try to get there before they leave for Washington." "And what about the people at the gala?" "I'll do what I can to get the event canceled or postponed." "But Maya, you need to disappear until this is over. The people hunting you aren't going to be deterred by social media coverage." Maya looked around at the crowds of people going about their normal Friday afternoon activities, unaware that they were potentially hours away from witnessing a government-orchestrated massacre. "No," she said firmly. "I'm not running anymore. If they want me, they can come and get me. But they'll have to do it in front of the whole world." Maya ended the call and continued her live stream, walking directly toward the Kennedy Center. While thousands of people watched online, she was done hiding. Maya's live stream had reached over 50,000 viewers by the time she reached the Kennedy Center's main entrance. The comments section was exploding with support, outrage, and conspiracy theories. But Maya focused on the most important development. Major news outlets were starting to cover her broadcast in real time. CNN had broken into regular programming to show footage from her stream. Fox News was running a chyron that read, "Delta Force soldier alleges government assassination attempt." Social media was amplifying her story faster than any traditional media outlet could have managed. Maya had succeeded in making herself too visible to kill quietly. But as she approached the Kennedy Center security perimeter, she realized that visibility might not be enough protection against people who were desperate enough to risk massive public exposure. A black van pulled up. to the curb near the entrance, and 6 men in tactical gear emerged. They weren't trying to be subtle anymore. They were clearly federal agents or military contractors moving to arrest or eliminate a target. Maya kept her camera rolling as the men approached. "As you can see," she said calmly to her viewers, "the government response to investigative journalism is to send armed tactical teams. These men are here to silence me before I can provide more evidence of the crimes I've exposed." The lead agent, a tall man with the bearing of someone accustomed to unquestioned authority, raised his hand. "Man, you need to come with us. For your own protection." "Protection from whom?" Maya asked, making sure the camera captured his face clearly. "From people who want to hurt you." "You mean like the people who tried to kill me this morning? Were those also for my protection?" The agent's expression hardened. "Man, this isn't a negotiation. You're coming with us." Maya took a step backward, keeping the camera focused on the agents. "I'm an American citizen engaged in constitutionally protected speech. On what authority are you detaining me?" "National Security Authority," the agent replied. Moving closer, Maya's livestream viewer count had now passed 100,000. The major news networks were all covering her broadcast, and politicians were starting to tweet about the situation. Maya had created exactly the kind of public spectacle that would make any government action very difficult to justify. But the agents were still advancing, apparently willing to arrest her on live television in front of hundreds of thousands of witnesses. Maya was calculating her options: run, fight, or surrender and hope public pressure would force her release. When the situation suddenly changed, a new voice cut through the tension. "Stand down." Deputy Director Harrison emerged from a government sedan, flanked by 2 agents Maya didn't recognize. He looked furious as he approached the tactical team. "Who authorized this operation?" Harrison demanded. The lead tactical agent consulted his radio, then replied, "Deputy Secretary Blackwood, sir. We have orders to bring the subject in for questioning related to national security violations." "Those orders are countermanded," Harrison said firmly. "Return to base immediately." "Sir, we have direct orders from someone who doesn't have operational authority in this jurisdiction." Harrison interrupted. "Check with your chain of command. This operation is terminated." Maya watched the exchange with fascination, realizing she was witnessing a power struggle between different factions within the government. Harrison represented one group, probably CIA officials who wanted to contain the scandal quietly, while the tactical team represented another group that was willing to use force regardless of the public relations consequences. The tactical team leader spent several minutes on his radio before finally nodding to his men. They returned to their van and drove away, but Maya could see they weren't going far. They were just getting out of camera range. Harrison approached Maya slowly, his hands visible and non-threatening. "Turn off the camera," he said quietly. "Please." "Not a chance," Maya replied. "Right now, this live stream is the only thing keeping me alive." "Maya, there are things I need to tell you that can't be said in public. Things about tonight that could get a lot of people killed if they become public knowledge too soon." Maya studied his face, trying to read his intentions. Harrison had just intervened to prevent her arrest, which suggested he was genuinely trying to help her. But she'd learned not to trust anyone in the intelligence community without independent verification. "Give me one piece of information I can verify," Maya said. "Something that proves you're telling the truth about tonight." Harrison glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with having this conversation in public. "The gala tonight isn't what it appears to be. It's a trap designed to eliminate everyone involved in exposing the arms sales journalists, sources, even some of the lower-level officials who might testify against the people at the top." "What kind of trap?" "The kind that involves blaming the violence on your teammates and using their deaths to justify a massive expansion of domestic surveillance and security operations. You're saying they want my teammates to attack the Kennedy Center. I'm saying they've been working to ensure that your teammates feel they have no choice but to attack the Kennedy Center. Every media report, every government denial, every escalation of pressure, it's all been designed to drive them toward exactly the kind of desperate action that would justify the response they've already planned. Maya's mind raced through the implications. If Harrison was right, then her media strategy hadn't prevented her teammates' operation. It had actually been used to manipulate them into proceeding with it. How do you know this? Maya demanded. Because I've been trying to stop it from the inside, Harrison replied. But I'm running out of time and options. Maya's livestream viewer count had now reached over 200,000, and she could see news vans arriving at the Kennedy Center. The story was becoming too big for anyone to control through traditional means. What do you need from me? Maya asked. Help me get to your teammates before they leave for Washington. If they proceed with their operation tonight, they'll be walking into a massacre designed to look like justified law enforcement action against domestic terrorists. Maya thought about Tommy, Jessica, and Michael sitting in the cabin in West Virginia, watching news coverage of her livestream and probably interpreting the government's aggressive response as proof that their violent approach was justified. We need to move fast, Maya said, making her decision. But I'm not turning off this camera. Whatever happens next, the world is going to see it. Harrison nodded grimly. Then let's hope we can reach them in time. As they walked toward Harrison's sedan, Maya kept the livestream running, narrating the situation for her growing audience. We're heading to prevent what could be a government-orchestrated massacre, she told the camera. If this stream suddenly cuts out, you'll know that we failed. The drive to West Virginia was tense, with Harrison making encrypted phone calls while Maya monitored news coverage and social media responses to her broadcast. The story had now gone global, with international news outlets picking up the coverage and foreign governments demanding explanations from the State Department. There, Harrison said, pointing to a dirt road that led into the mountains. Half a mile up that road. Maya felt her heart rate increase as they approached the cabin. Everything would depend on whether her teammates were still there, and whether they could be convinced that their original plan would play directly into their enemies' hands. The cabin came into view, and Maya could see the white panel van parked outside. They were still there. Tommy, Jessica, Michael, Maya called out as she approached the cabin, keeping her hands visible and the camera rolling. We need to talk right now. The cabin door opened, and Tommy emerged with his rifle lowered, but ready. His face showed surprise at seeing Maya with Harrison, but also the kind of alert tension that suggested the team was already prepared for their evening operation. Maya, Tommy called out. What's going on? It's a trap, Maya said urgently. The Kennedy Center. The gala, all of it. They want you to attack so they can justify killing you and everyone who might expose the truth. Jessica and Michael appeared in the doorway, both armed and clearly suspicious of Harrison's presence. He's CIA, Jessica said flatly. The same organization that tried to kill us. I'm also the person who just prevented Maya from being arrested. On live television, Harrison replied. And I'm trying to prevent all of you from walking into an ambush. Tommy studied Harrison's face, then looked at Maya's camera. How many people are watching this? Over 300,000, Maya replied, and growing. The story is out, Tommy. The world knows what they did to us. You don't need to become martyrs to get justice. Michael stepped forward, and Maya could see the internal struggle playing out across his features. But will there actually be justice? Or will they just weather the storm and go back to business as usual? There are already calls for congressional hearings, Maya said. Multiple countries are demanding explanations. The Pentagon has suspended 3 high-ranking officials pending investigation. The system is working, Michael. Slowly, imperfectly. But it's working. Jessica lowered her weapon slightly. What about Deputy Secretary Blackwood? What about the people who gave the orders? Blackwood's been placed on administrative leave, Harrison said. The Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation. It's not everything you wanted, but it's real accountability through legal channels. Tommy looked at his teammates, then back at Maya. And if we stand down, if we trust the system to deliver justice, what guarantee do we have that they won't just make all of this disappear once the media attention dies down? Maya held up her camera. This is your guarantee. Every step of the process, every decision, every attempt to cover things up, it all happens in the public eye now. We've broken their ability to operate in secret. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind through the trees and the distant hum of Maya's livestream audience watching history unfold in real time. Finally, Tommy set down his rifle. "All right," he said quietly, "we stand down. But we're not disappearing again, Maya. We're going public, telling our story, making sure the world knows exactly what was done to us and why." Maya felt tears of relief streaming down her face as Jessica and Michael also lowered their weapons. "Deal," she said. "We do this together legally, and we make sure it sticks." As the sun set over the West Virginia mountains, Maya Chen concluded her livestream with a promise to her viewers and to herself. The truth would come out, justice would be served, and no one would ever again be sacrificed to protect the corrupt and powerful. Within hours of the livestream ending, the dominoes began falling. Deputy Secretary Blackwood was arrested at his home on charges of conspiracy and arms trafficking. 3 Pentagon officials were taken into custody before dawn. The Senate Armed Services Committee announced emergency hearings beginning the following week. Maya and her teammates emerged from 18 months of hiding to testify before Congress, their survival and evidence making denial impossible. The illegal arms network was dismantled, its architects facing federal prosecution. The war was far from over, but this battle had been won without a single shot being fired and with justice finally being served through the very system they had fought to protect. Creating a story of this magnitude requires months of planning, writing, and careful narration to ensure every detail is perfect and every moment keeps you engaged. This has been the equivalent of a complete novella, crafted specifically for this format. If this epic story moved you, inspired you, or simply entertained you through this incredible journey, please show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more amazing long-form stories. Share this with anyone who loves compelling narratives and has the patience for truly epic storytelling. Hit that notification bell to be the first to hear our newest content. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community and for joining me on this remarkable adventure. I'll see you in the next incredible tale.